Welcome. I'm Dana Vickers Shelley, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Maryland, the ACLU. Welcome to Constitution Day 2021. Lift every voice, speak, act, vote. We have a special presentation about the Bill of Rights and about how it does and does not represent all Americans, and about how we can work together to expand and exercise our rights so the law values and uplifts the humanity of all Marylanders and is accessible in particular to those Marylanders whose lives and livelihoods were not included at the founding of our state or our nation. This is a special presentation tonight. It's also a special invitation to join us in celebrating the ACLU of Maryland's 90th anniversary. Yes, 2021 marks our 90th year, protecting civil liberties and civil rights and advancing racial justice. In a year marked by a global pandemic and a reinvigorated national racial justice movement, along with more than 400 anti-voter bills, redistricting underway, and the Trump Supreme Court, our efforts here in Maryland have never been more necessary and urgent. 90 years later, the ACLU of Maryland continues our journey for freedom and justice for all that began at our founding in 1931. As we celebrate our 90th anniversary, we ask you to join us in that celebration by supporting the work of the ACLU of Maryland with a special 90th birthday gift by texting ACLU-MD to 41444. Help us protect and strengthen democracy for the next 90 years. In our program, we'll talk about recent and very important ACLU victories and also about the strategic work ahead of us. This program is different from years past. First, of course, we're here virtually, and we're so happy to see so many of you joining us tonight, so many members and supporters and friends of the ACLU of Maryland and joining us today. We'll begin with a powerful spoken word performance by Lady Brion, Director of the Black Arts District in Baltimore and cultural curator with Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle. You'll have your chance to share thoughts inspired by the poem with the ACLU. Then I'll lead a discussion with Lady Brion and our senior education advocate, Frank Patinella. We'll reflect on the poem, talk about how the Bill of Rights does and does not shape our work, and how we can collaboratively make an impact to protect and advance rights in true partnership with Marylanders who are directly impacted by the issues and systems we're working to correct. Before we begin, please go ahead and text ACLU-MD to 41444 to make a 90th birthday gift to the ACLU. Thank you so much for your support. And now it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce the spoken word power of Lady Brion.
People of brown skin have traveled within these lands since before America could say her own name, before America was her only name. But when her forefathers signed adoption papers and birthed a nation, this skin was forever orphaned. That's why I know I will never truly be a citizen. I'm just an inhabitant, a body to count, a place to hold that holds no merit, holds no bearing, especially not the right to bear arms, but held in chokeholds often by officers who police. No holds barred we hold, no water except the Atlantic Ocean that holds a burial ground for the unenslaved. Perhaps they knew the horrors these shores hold that knows no bounds. This republic don't reflect me. See, the strongest thing a man can build is a social construct. No metal or material alloy can match matters of the mind. Manipulated men drew lines and called it colonies. Mastered race and crafted whitey. Created constitution and made a federacy with their agendas organized politically. But my rights ain't written in the Bill of Rights. No provisions for the non-whites. Took 19 amendments to even consider women outside of property of their husbands. And you can't ratify equity. Slavery is the foundation of this nation, so ain't no revisions, just reparations. If you pay attention, you can see the black appendages still dangling in the appendix. So to be clear, this construct was meant to constrain me, but does not pertain to me. No protections for the children of the 3/5. This Constitution ain't nothing but a prison. Word to the 13th Amendment. This construct calls us to cast ballots, as if the selected will ever truly reflect my perspective. The election's rigged because the government always wins and the people are just willing participants to be African American or anything other than the privileged, who have never questioned their existence in this nation. Is not to be citizen. It's to be interruption. This pen be resistance. Make gun of this tongue and my intelligence be a full clip. They ask about all this rage as if we're not walking explosions. And the Constitution, the laws, the legislation ain't nothing but fodder to the fire. And I promise you don't want this smoke. This system isn't broken. It's working. Just to the benefit of white supremacists, the Constitution has always been living, able to be changed and rewritten. So I've made a few amendments. Amendment 1, all people are created equal. This includes the entire spectrum of gender expression and sexual orientation. Amendment 2, as such, we all now have the privilege of white men in this country. Amendment 3, it's for atonement. For the aboriginals who lost their land, for the black hands who were made to pick cotton, were sharecropping, or made to survive in Jim Crow South, for the casualties of the war on drugs and poverty, for the children of broken families, for the sins of this nation. There must be a reckoning. Amendment 4 is for the redistribution of wealth and power. It cannot only be held in the hands of a few. And finally, we must amend the way we implement laws in this country, because well-written legislation cannot change moral corruption. So this is a call to us all to uphold the standards of what this country could be, a place where we can all exist freely, because don't we all deserve that?
That was so powerful. Thank you, Lady Brion, for sharing your vision and talents with us. I'm John Henderson, the board president of the ACLU of Maryland. Please take a moment to use this online prompt to share your reflections on Lady Brion's poem with us. It's now time to hear from Lady Brion, our Executive Director, Dana Vickers Shelley, and our Senior Education Advocate, Frank Patinella, in a pre-recorded session where they will dive deeper into the themes of the poem and talk more about the work going on right now that you can get involved in and support. Remember that you can make your special 90th anniversary gift to the ACLU of Maryland by texting ACLU-MD to 41444.
That was such a powerful poem and message by Lady Brion. I am so pleased and honored to introduce you to the person who wrote and performed that powerful message, Lady Brion. She is an international spoken word artist, a community organizer, and the cultural curator at Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle. Lady Brion is joining me for a short discussion, along with my colleague, Frank Patinella, Senior Education Advocate with the ACLU of Maryland. Let's get started. Lady Brion, I'll start with you. What was your process in developing this poem?
Oh, that's such a great question. I mean, for me, I really had to first sort of sit with the idea of the Constitution. And because the prompt was really, right, like what was my connection to the Constitution as a Black woman in America? And so I really had to sit with that thought, right? The history of America and the foundation of this country and its relation to Black people, to slavery, right? A history that we often don't talk about enough and don't talk about the ramifications of that history today. And so I ruminated on it for quite some time, and I really just allowed myself to be honest about my feelings, about the ways in which it impacts people today. And then after reading it to a friend, a colleague, another poet, they asked me about hopefulness. They asked me about, what does it look like to try to navigate today in a country where, yes, we have this, horrid past, but we also are still trying to exist in this country. And so I then did a rewrite and added some things to really talk about not just my, I guess, visceral reaction to the prompt, but also looking towards the future. And if I could make changes, or if we could be in a country that was more equitable, right? What would that look like? And so, shaping the poem was definitely a very introspective process for me, and I really enjoyed writing it.
That's terrific. Thank you for sharing that. Frank, what did you feel or think when you heard the poem?
Thank you, Dana and Lady Brion. First, I want to say that I read Lady Brion's poem before hearing her perform it, and I was immediately struck by the powerful language and imagery that she used to reflect on our nation's document that is supposed to guarantee the rights and equal treatment and prosperity of all Americans. And honestly, I had to pause and take a moment at each passage, oftentimes rereading phrases more than once, several times throughout the piece. And I got choked up at the horrors that were written on the page. And after hearing the piece aloud, her words and expressions made my heart ache even more. I'm a first-generation brown-skinned American. And so, I personally don't have much history in this country. I don't carry the centuries of horrors and pain that my Black friends and allies today live with every day. But there were many passages in Lady Brion's piece that resonate with me personally. And it conjures up feelings of inadequacy that I felt and the cultural dissonance that I experienced as a kid. I learned early on that I looked different than the white majority. People have said to me, go back to your country, being called racial slurs, even racial slurs that don't even align with my ethnicity. I mean, they let me know that I didn't belong in that upper tier of citizenship. And in my teen years, those were dark times for me. I know that I internalized what was being projected onto me, and it took me many years to believe in my own self-worth and feel comfortable and strong in my own skin. I mean, I grew up in Baltimore City, and I continue to live here now. Lady Brion's powerful words are on display in our faces in every part of the city, throughout the state, and the whole country, in every moment of every day. And I can't stand around and just watch it happen. So I chose to dedicate my life to ensuring that the rights embedded in the Constitution are fully realized for Black and Brown people and communities.
Thank you for sharing that, Frank. My own reaction, as I had the opportunity to read the words as well as hear Lady Brion's voice, she was speaking to me, and I wonder if a great poet, if that's their intent or that's what happens. You were speaking directly to me. I'm a Black cisgender woman, 63 years old, living in America in 2021. And I even think how from the time that we initially talked about this work to our Constitution Day event today, how many things you touched on that you didn't know were going to happen. Laws in Texas to keep people from voting, taking away women's rights, people's rights over their body and reproductive freedom, people being evicted from their homes, so many things. As I heard your words, and Frank used one of my words, was this hopefulness that comes across despite, or maybe is it because of, the trauma, the pain, the oppression, that still there's hope that Black people still have, and many Americans still have in this country, despite what is thrown in our face, from the history to what's happening today. Your words were so, I keep using the word powerful, and I thought about them as I also think our theme for Constitution Day is Lift Every Voice. And I think about the words that James Weldon Johnson wrote to talk about the hope for the future of Black people, African Americans in this country, when he wrote that almost 100 years ago. And now 2021, Lady Brion's words take us to a new place of hope, still reminding us of all the work that is to be done. My commitment and vision for the work that the ACLU is doing, the ACLU of Maryland is doing, is to make sure that the actual words of the Constitution are accessible, fully accessible to those for whom it was not intended when our state was founded, when the Constitution was written. Lady Brion, thank you so much again for those both inspiring, powerful words and power that you put into your poem.
Thank you. Absolutely. And thank you for your words. I really appreciate everything that the both of you have said. And, you know, oftentimes as poets, we don't get to hear reactions from folks who have listened to our work. So it is tremendously impactful just to hear, one, that you felt like the poem was directed to you, but then two, that the message that I intended for the piece actually reached folks and moved you and, you know, was aligned with what I intended. So I feel like I did a good job of the assignment. So thank you so much.
Thank you again. So my next question that I'd like to ask both of you, if you would share with me, how does the US Bill of Rights intersect or not intersect with the work that you do? So Lady Brion, if you would go first in thinking about your leadership as cultural curator at Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle and other work that you're doing across the city, the state, and the country.
Yeah, such an interesting question. I think that, you know, with my work with Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, which is a grassroots think tank in the city, right, doing work to advocate and to better the material conditions of Black folks in Baltimore City. I think, a lot of the themes that come up in the poem are things that we're consistently working to change, to fix. And so thinking about the Bill of Rights and the way in which it's intended to benefit us all, but it often has shortcomings in the way things are implemented to really ensure that those rights are realized. I mean, that's really the work of Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, particularly in Baltimore. And as an artist, I really see myself as, we like to call ourselves artivists, right? Living right at that intersection of art and activism, and using our work, whether it be for us artists, whether we be visual artists or performance artists or what have you. How can you raise awareness? How can you help mobilize people? How can you help inform or push people to different perspectives? How can you really empathize with folks through your work that can really help to not only change people's minds, but move people to act? And so, given that sort of frame for the way that I approach my art, I think in the same way, as the work with Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, I'm trying to figure out how can my poetry be used in a way that either helps people to understand their rights, help people to feel like they have agency to act against instances of injustice, right? How can I use my art as a tool to really better the world around me? And I think that when we're talking about the Bill of Rights again, there's just a lot of holes, a lot of things that need to be filled and changed. And though I'm not sure in my day-to-day life, I'm really quoting the Bill of Rights or referring to the Bill of Rights, but in the same breath, this is a foundational document for how we navigate America, period, and the foundational document in which so many laws and policies are built. So in a sense, I am, even if I'm not directly talking about the Bill of Rights. I think the other thing, in being the founder and executive director of the Black Arts District, right, it makes me think about how I can use that institution as the way to get other artists to also see themselves as more than just entertainers, but how can we, especially as Black artists who don't really have the luxury for art's sake, as I like to say it, really use what we have, the gift that we have, the talents that we have, to help better Baltimore City and build a base of power that can really make change.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing that. And I should have noted also in my introduction that you are the executive director and leader for the Baltimore Arts District, and we definitely appreciate your leadership there as well. Frank, let me ask you, how does the Bill of Rights intersect or not with your work with the ACLU as senior education advocate?
I would say it doesn't directly intersect with the work that I do. I work as an education advocate, and as I travel around to various corners of the state over the 13 years that I've been at the ACLU, I've learned that not many people know that Maryland's Constitution guarantees a quality public education for all public school children in the state. Article 8 of Maryland's Constitution reads, "The General Assembly at its first session after the adoption of this Constitution shall by law establish throughout the state a thorough and efficient system of free public schools and shall provide by taxation or otherwise for their maintenance." So back in the 90s, the ACLU responded to concerns voiced by parents of Baltimore City school children about their schools not living up to what is guaranteed by the state constitution. They were concerned about the lack of quality and comprehensive academic programming, citing low test scores, inadequate resources, including science and the arts, and school facilities that were literally falling apart with aging and deficient heating systems, lack of air conditioning, and leaking roofs. So we represented them in a class action lawsuit called Bradford versus the State Board of Education, which contended that the state was in violation of its constitutional obligation by not adequately funding the city school system. We won that lawsuit in the year 2000, along with our plaintiffs, and the state responded by adopting a new education funding law in 2002 that directed a lot more money for Baltimore City schools and other school districts of low wealth. The state followed through with the law's funding requirements until 2008, when the when they cut part of the funding formula, which led to hundreds of millions in funding losses for the city school system and other districts over the past decade. So we're kind of back where we started. With grassroots partners and our coalition partners, we've rallied and we've demanded a fix and made progress in making up some of that gap left by the cut. And we secured $1 billion to start rebuilding Baltimore City schools in recent years. But the education debt is enormous, and it has compounded over many decades, affecting many generations of Black and Brown families. So much more needs to be done. Now we're in the year 2021, and we're back in court under the same lawsuit, Bradford, demanding that education funding be restored to what is called for by the state constitution so that Black and Brown children, students from low-income families, and students who are English language learners can receive the quality education that they're entitled to. And as part of ensuring that education is racially equitable, we've heard from thousands of students and parents across Maryland about the many ways in which education is racially biased, incompetent, and dehumanizing. We are following their lead and supporting the work to ensure that Black and Brown students, as well as students who require special education services, are not unfairly suspended and disciplined for everyday behavioral infractions. And we're also working to ensure that the academic programming and the way that teachers and school staff deliver lessons and interact with students is done in a way that is uplifting, humanizing, and racially and culturally responsive.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate your sharing that with our audience today. In terms of the ACLU of Maryland, some of our recent victories have done a lot of important work in partnership with Marylanders across the state to protect and expand rights. We supported Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, Erica Bridgeford, co-founder of Ceasefire 365, and Kevin James, community organizer and hip hop musician, in their legal challenge to get rid of spy planes that were being flown over the city. Like neighborhoods like BPD cannot be trusted to put residents under constant aerial surveillance. And we were proud to support Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, Ceasefire 365, and Mr. James in that effort, and we were successful in that. In terms of the Fourth Amendment, protection against unreasonable searches and seizures, we supported 4 Baltimore women in their successful legal challenge to not have a multi-day block lockdown on the Harlem Park neighborhood where they reside in the city. The women charged that their state and federal constitutional rights were violated, and they won significant reforms to ensure that it never happens again. We were so pleased and honored to work with those leaders in our city. Also in the 14th Amendment, equal protections under the laws, we supported Sarah Medrano in her successful challenge to racial profiling of Latinx people in Frederick County, Maryland. That was done by the sheriff of Frederick County. Ms. Medrano defended her right to equal protection of the laws. She won reforms and even an apology from Sheriff Chuck Jenkins, who we know has been an ardent advocate against the lives and humanity of immigrants in our state. In terms of the 15th Amendment right to vote, we've had a lot of really terrific victories and successes over the years, thanks to the leadership and work and experience of coalitions and organizations led by Black women across the state to make sure that people who are returning home from incarceration know that they have the right to vote, to register, and to be active, as well as to increase the availability and accessibility of the ballot for people who are currently in jail, waiting for processing. Those leaders across our state, Out for Justice, led by Nicole Mundell, Life After Release, led by Kiana Johnson, and the Maryland Justice Project, led by Monica Cooper, have been so instrumental, and we've been just honored and appreciative of their leadership and how we're able to learn from them. We also worked with the state coalition last year in 2020 during the major election to make sure that voting by mail was available to all Maryland voters, both in the primary and in the general election. Through vote by mail, the state actually increased voter participation to record levels, where turnout was 74.5%, 3 million people, over what had been done previously. We look forward to continuing this work and see the connections between, again, the Bill of Rights, how we are making sure that the promise of the Constitution is accessible to all. To Lady Brion as well as Frank, and this will be our last question unless there's something else you'd like to raise. How can people who care about these issues, how can they get involved? What should they do if they want to make a difference as well? What are your thoughts and suggestions for community members who would like to make a difference? Lady Brion, I'll start with you.
Well, as I mentioned, being the executive director of the Pennsylvania Avenue Black Arts and Entertainment District, we're a new organization. So folks, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, if you want to support, you can certainly donate. Every donation goes a long way. We are always sponsoring creatives in the city who are looking to curate different experiences, who are holding space and bolstering the creative community in Baltimore. So we try to support them in every way that we can, and that definitely takes monetary support. So if you like, you can definitely donate on our website. It's www.blackartsdistrict.org. I would also say we as an organization are always looking to ensure that we are amplifying the message, the visibility, and the creative production of our creatives, particularly Black creatives in Baltimore. So by following us, sharing our message, talking about the work that we're doing and the work that creatives are doing in this city actually goes an extremely long way, because the greater our reach, the more opportunities that we are able to provide for creatives. And then lastly, I would talk about volunteer support, right? I don't know who's all listening, but I think that we all come with skills and talents that could be useful, especially to our creative community. So if you are open to pro bono legal support or financial training or business training and coaching, or there's so many things that we love to connect creatives, especially those early in their career, to services that they may not be able to afford or do not have the accessibility to connect with those things. We are always open to making those connections. Unfortunately, with the coronavirus pandemic, we aren't necessarily doing too many outdoor events, but once we're on the other side of things, we are always looking for volunteers to help with things that we're doing in the community or events that we're doing as well. So volunteer, donate, or just share the message, share the word.
Thank you so much. And will you give us the web address people can learn more and follow the Baltimore Black Arts?
Yeah. So one more time, it is www.blackartsdistrict.org. And on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Facebook, we are official Black Arts District. And on Twitter, we are _official BAD.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Frank, from your perspective, working in education and working with young people and organizations across the state, what would you ask people to do to get involved and to make a difference on these issues?
It's I think Lady Brion said it all. It's just critically important that people use their voices, right, and collectively to send a message and to put pressure on the legislature and other people who are decision makers to get to enact change. Please reach out to us. We're always working with our grassroots partners in education advocacy, and we really need to hear from you to guide our work. And we want to work collaboratively with you to help uplift your voice and to develop strategies and show up together to push progressive and racially conscious agendas. Right now, we are busy gearing up for the legislative session that will begin in January. We're going to be meeting with legislators, legislative leaders, and other decision makers before the session starts. I mean, the work is happening now, and it's important. I mean, our democratic, the democratic system needs to work for everyone, and we need to make it work for everyone. So please get involved. I want to mention that last year, a new group that the Baltimore Algebra Project, the ACLU, and several other groups around the state, and this group has a wide breadth of representation from a number of counties. And these are all grassroots organizations that are working on the ground level that are addressing or working to address things that are happening in their schools, specifically racist things that are happening in their school. And we pushed a bill last year that would have required the state to set up a commission or work group to study content and develop standards for African American history and multicultural education. Despite having a number of groups show up at the hearings and such, they did not pass the bill. Actually, they didn't even bring it up to, on the committee floor for a vote. So we can move it forward, but they need to feel the pressure from the grassroots, right? And there's a new group called Anti-Racism for Maryland Schools. We're going to have a symposium on October 16th. That's a Saturday at 11 a.m. This will be student-led, and we will be announcing that on our website very soon. In addition to the anti-racism work that we're doing, the state recently passed the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. This is a sweeping education reform bill that's going to direct another $3.4 billion into the education system throughout in every district in Maryland. This is based on the Kirwan Commission's work, which you might have heard about. This is being implemented now, so it's very important that communities pay attention to what is going on in their schools. And, you know, we have reason to be concerned about certain elements of the bill, and reason to believe that not everything promised in the bill will actually be implemented. So please keep in touch with us about that. And the Bradford lawsuit, along with the legislative and policy work that we're doing, we are in court now under the Bradford lawsuit, again, representing a new class of plaintiffs. We will be updating the public in town hall meetings, and you can reach out to me directly if you want to receive more information about that lawsuit. But right now we are in the discovery phase. We are not, we are heading towards a visit to court. And we would love to share any information with you about that, and also just hear your input, because that also influences what we do.
Thank you so much, Frank and Lady Brion. I would be remiss if I didn't also talk about how we encourage folks to join the ACLU of Maryland, to be a part of our work to protect civil rights, civil liberties for all Marylanders, to address racial injustice, to make sure that in education, in terms of education equity, government accountability, individual autonomy, immigrants' rights, and voting rights, that those are protected and addressed. You can become a member donor to make sure that we can continue doing this work by following us at ACLU-MD.org. Join our mailing list so that when activities and events like the Anti-Racism in School Symposium happens, when lobbying day comes up, when other activities are on the calendar, and other opportunities to reach legislators directly, county council members, mayors, leaders in the community who are making decisions on things, that you can be involved and know what the ACLU is doing. Please follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, and Facebook for news about our actions and events. Thank you so much for this conversation today to Lady Brion, Cultural Curator for Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, Executive Director of Baltimore's Black Arts District, to Frank Patinella, Senior Education Advocate at the ACLU of Maryland, We want to thank you for your leadership and contributions that help to make sure the promise of the Constitution is accessible to all Marylanders. We appreciate our visitors, our guests listening in and watching us on Zoom and other platforms to follow us. We thank you for participating in this important discussion. Thank you again. Take care.
What a great discussion. Together we have victories to build on and important work ahead. I'm Humaira Ziad, Vice President of the ACLU of Maryland. I encourage you to make your special birthday gift to the ACLU in honor of our 90th anniversary by texting ACLU-MD to 41444. Make sure to stay in touch with us by joining our email list and following us on social media. This December, the General Assembly will have a special session to consider redistricting. State legislators will also, hopefully, override Governor Hogan's vetoes of much-needed parole reform and the Dignity Not Detention Bill. One important opportunity to take action will be our 2021 Grassroots Legislative Leadership Day. We'll be announcing the date for that soon, and there will be more events and actions coming up too. Your leadership is needed to make a real difference. Thank you for joining us for Constitution Day 2021.